Change doesn't begin with action. It begins with intention, and intention is rooted in clarity. Before you can lead meaningful change, whether in your life, your organization, or your community, you need to understand why the change matters. Not just what needs to be done or how you're going to do it, but why it matters at all. Most people start with the mechanics, the goals, the steps, the strategies, but those are only effective when they serve something deeper. Without a sense of purpose, change becomes shallow, and people will resist it, not because they don't care, but because they don't understand. When you start with why, you give people something to believe in. You offer them a reason to care, to engage, to commit. Change isn't just about moving from point A to point B. It's about aligning people around a shared cause, something that speaks to their values and emotions. If the why is clear, the what becomes easier to accept, and the how becomes more collaborative. But if the why is missing, even the best laid plans will fall apart under resistance and doubt. When you communicate change, don't just announce the shift. Articulate the reason behind it. Speak to what's at stake, not in terms of numbers or metrics, but in terms of meaning. What's the better future you're working toward? Who will be impacted? Why is now the time to act? These are the questions that spark commitment, not just compliance. Ultimately, change sticks when people feel connected to a cause larger than themselves. That connection starts with clarity, and clarity begins when we stop trying to push people into action and start inviting them into purpose. Without a compelling reason to change, most people simply won't. But give them a reason, and they'll move mountains. Creating real change requires more than just shifting behaviors. It requires transforming beliefs. Too often, leaders and individuals try to drive change by focusing only on what people do. They introduce new rules, set new targets, or roll out new systems, assuming that if you change the behavior, the results will follow. But this approach overlooks the deeper truth. Lasting change happens from the inside out. People don't change sustainably unless they first believe differently. Belief is the foundation upon which behavior is built. Think about any meaningful change in your life. It probably didn't start with a to-do list. It likely started with a moment of clarity, a shift in perspective, or a deep emotional insight. That internal shift made the external actions possible. If you want others to adopt new habits or support new directions, you can't just tell them what to do. You have to help them see the world in a new way. You have to create a story they want to be a part of, one that aligns with their values and gives them a reason to care. When people believe in the purpose behind a change, they act not because they're told to, but because they want to. That's the difference between compliance and commitment. Compliance can be mandated, but commitment has to be earned. And it's earned through trust, inspiration, and emotional connection. This is why change initiatives that rely solely on rules or incentives often fail. They might produce short-term shifts, but without a shift in mindset, the old behaviors return. So if you want to create change that lasts, start by focusing not just on what people need to do differently, but what they need to believe differently. Change the belief, and the behavior will follow. Every time, change doesn't begin with policies or programs. It begins with people, and people don't follow instructions, they follow example. If you want to create meaningful change, you must first live the change. You must become the model of what you hope to see in others. Because the truth is, people are far more influenced by what they observe than by what they're told. They watch how you show up. They pay attention to your actions when things are difficult. They notice whether your words align with your behavior. That alignment, or lack of it, determines whether they will trust you and follow your lead. When a leader says one thing but does another, trust erodes. But when someone consistently shows up with integrity and courage even in uncertainty, people listen. They may not always agree immediately, but they pay attention. This is how movements start, not with mass announcements, but with quiet acts of consistency that others begin to emulate. One person stands up, and suddenly others realize they can too. One person dares to speak honestly, and others find the courage to do the same. Creating change means going first. It means being willing to do the hard thing before you ask others to. If you want a more honest culture, speak the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable. If you want more innovation, be the first to take a risk. If you want a kinder environment, treat others with compassion regardless of how they behave in return. The change you lead with your actions speaks louder than any memo or mission statement. People don't follow perfection. They follow authenticity. And when they see someone embodying the change they talk about, day in and day out, that's when trust is built. And trust is the only real foundation for sustainable change. When we talk about change, we often focus on systems, strategies, or timelines. But real, lasting change doesn't begin with a new process. It begins with people. Change is ultimately a human experience, not a mechanical one. Too many efforts fail because they overlook the emotional side of transformation. People don't resist change itself. They resist being changed without being seen, heard, or understood. What they fear is loss of control, of certainty, of identity. And if we ignore those human concerns, even the most well-designed change will hit resistance like a brick wall. To create meaningful change, you must focus on connection first. People need to feel safe before they can move forward. They need to know that their voices matter, that their experiences are valid, and that they're not being pushed aside in the name of progress. Change imposed from the top, without empathy or conversation, breeds fear. And fear shuts down creativity, trust, and cooperation, the very things that make change possible. If you want people to embrace a new way of thinking or working, begin with curiosity, ask questions, listen deeply, make space for uncertainty and dialogue. Help people see that they are part of the story, not just subjects of it. The more included someone feels, the more invested they become. When people are treated like partners in change, not obstacles to it, they rise to the challenge. And remember, change doesn't happen to systems, it happens to people within systems. When you lead with humanity, when you take the time to connect before you correct, the resistance softens, the walls come down. Because at the core of every successful change is the same truth. People don't just want to be changed. They want to be understood, respected, and inspired to move forward. Give them that, and they'll help build the future with you. Big change doesn't happen all at once. It's not a grand event or a sweeping revolution. More often it starts small. One choice, one habit, one win at a time. This is how real momentum is built, through consistent, visible progress that people can feel and celebrate. When you focus only on the long-term vision, the finish line can feel so far away that it becomes overwhelming. But when you break that vision down into tangible, meaningful steps, people begin to see that change is possible, and that they are part of making it happen. Small wins are powerful because they create belief. Each win, no matter how minor it may seem, tells a new story. We can do this, this is working, we're moving forward. That shift in mindset is what fuels further action. It builds confidence, energy, and trust. It also reduces fear, because instead of staring into the unknown, people are grounded in what's working right now. These wins become anchors, proof points that change is not only happening, but that it's within reach. Leaders who understand this don't wait for the big breakthrough before they celebrate progress. They recognize and reward the early adopters. They shine a light on what's going well. They share stories that inspire others to try, to care, and to contribute. Every small act of progress becomes an invitation. Join us. This is worth doing. Change doesn't require perfection. It requires movement, and momentum is built in inches, not miles. One step leads to another, and before long, what once felt impossible starts to feel inevitable. So don't underestimate the power of a small win. In the journey of change, it's not just a sign of progress. It's the fuel that keeps the whole engine moving.